Good day, my name is Richard and a warm welcome to Tutoring with Richard, where we cover the South African school syllabus and native topics. Today we're going to cover Mathematics in 6. The topic of this tutorial is area bound by a curve. Let's get straight into it. Okay, the types of areas and curves that you get sine, cosine, tan, you get a parabola, you get a straight line, and so on. So you have to know your graphs and your formulas for your graphs, because sometimes all they give you is just a formula in your exam. That's all they give you in your exam is just a formula. So you've got to know which graph, and they ask you to draw the graph. Alright, so what we have here is a sine graph that goes y is equal to 2 sine 2x. Okay. Now this is our graph. So what we need to do is first we'll draw our graph on the side here. We'll draw our graph on the side here, and we've got a better picture of what we're dealing with. So this is y-axis, and that's x-axis. Okay, this is what a sine graph looks like. That's a sine graph. Now, what we need to do is, because we are doing areas, we need to calculate the area underneath each curve of the graph. So how we're going to do that is via integration with limits. So this is 0, that is pi over 2, and that is pi. Okay. Now some of you might not know what pi over 2 and pi mean. Okay, so I'm going to draw you a quick list. Pi equals 180 degrees. Pi over 2 equals 90 degrees. Pi over 4 equals 45 degrees. Pi over 6 equals 30 degrees. And pi over 3 equals 60 degrees. $180 divided by 3 is 60. So, all of these values here are your main interest points. They will always show you one of these, any one of these values in your test or exam that you might be writing or anything. They'll always show you one of these values that you have to go from. So that'll be one of your limits. But now in our case, our limit is x is equal to pi. And x is equal to 0. Okay. So unfortunately for this, we cannot just go from 0 to pi. That can't work, because you can only do half the graph, because it's one side's on top, one side's on the bottom. So you can only do one half at a time. But they are symmetrical. Remember that for later. These two are symmetrical. So once you've worked out the area for one, you've already worked out the area for the other. So let's work out the area between 0 and pi over 2. Pi over 2 is 90 degrees. Okay, so we have pi over 2 and 0, 2 sine 2x. Now what we do is we transpose. We transpose the 2 outside the integral sign. So we have 2 pi over 2 sine 2x. Now we can integrate this a lot easier, because integration likes one term. This was already multiplied by 2. So it doesn't like 2 terms, it only likes one term. So remember that. Don't just try and integrate with the 2 inside. It'll be messy. And make this as easy as possible for yourself. So, 2. Now we're going to do a square bracket now. And this is minus cos 2x over 2. The square bracket and pi over 2 and 0. Okay. Now we've got one term. Now, always what to remember when you're doing areas and volumes is that your limit, you input your limit where you find x, or what you integrate it by. So that means if it's dx or du or dt or anything like that, you replace the x value with whatever your limit was. And it's always your limit, your upper limit minus your lower limit. Okay, now the next step in this is we've already integrated. So now we're going to say 2 times minus cos 2 to the okay. What we need to do is take the upper limit minus the lower limit of your integral. So, when doing this, you need to say that whatever your integral was, if it was dx, dt, dz, or whatever it was, you must replace that x, or whatever letter it was, with your limits. You replace that with your limit, and it's always your upper limit minus your lower limit. So this is pi over 2 minus cos, and this is all over 2, cos 2 times 0 all over 2, and that goes in the square bracket. Okay. So, now 2 times 2 pi. 2 times pi is 2 pi. Divided by 2 is pi, because the 2 2's cancel. So that is pi. And pi in a cos graph, is -1. That's where pi is at -1. So what we're going to do is we're going to say our cos graph is negative 1 over 2. Okay? And this minus negative. Now, 2 times 0 is 0. Cos 0 is positive 1. So, 1 over 2. And we are left with that in a square bracket. And multiply that all by 2. So, what we have is a minus times a minus is a positive. So that's positive. And a minus times a minus is also a positive. So we take that away. And a half plus a half is 1. And 1 and 2 and 2 times 1 is 2. Units, squared. That is for, now this is all for half the graph. So what we need to do is take the graph of our original sine graph, which was here. Our original sine graph is here. And that's the area we need to calculate. So for this side, it's 2 units squared. But for this side, it's also 2 units squared because the graph is symmetrical. So because the graph is symmetrical, we take 2 times 2 equals 4 units squared. And that's how we get our values for, so we did half the graph and then we multiplied it by the same amount for the other side of the graph to get 0 and pi. So we cut the graph in two so that we could have a symmetrical graph. So we cut the graph in two so that we have symmetry. And this is symmetry right here. This is symmetry right here. What's the same here is the same there. They may be on opposite sides of the line, but they are exactly the same. -1 +1. Okay, our next sum goes like this. It is 2x plus 1, y equals. So how this graph works is your y is equal to mx plus c. Your plus c is your y-intercept. So this graph goes, this graph will actually go like this. And that is 1 over here, and 0, 1, 2, 3. So on and so forth. Now, as we know, and for this particular case, x is equal to 3. Now, what they will state sometimes in this is that and the x-axis the x-axis is x at 0. So that means x at 0. So this is x and that is y. Okay, so what we need to do is now we integrate, we have our limits, so we integrate 3 and 0. 2x plus 1 dx. Okay, which means we take the integral with regard to x. So, now let's take the integral. Now we don't have to split these either. We can split them, but you don't have to, because it's already split here by the plus sign. So, 2x becomes 1 plus 1. 1 plus 1 over 1 plus 1. Plus 1x 0 plus 1 over 0 plus 1. In a bracket, in a square bracket, 3 and 0. Okay, so this is 2x squared over 2 plus 1x over 1. Okay, so anything over 1 is just itself. So what we're going to do, and 2 cancels with 2. So we're left with 3 and 0, and we're left with, and 1 over 1 cancels. So we are left with x squared plus x. Now, as I've explained before, you take your highest value limit minus your lower limit. So your upper limit minus your lower limit. And it's the whole formula that takes it, not just one. It's the whole formula. So this is 3 squared plus 3 minus 0 squared plus 0. Okay, so 0 plus 0 equals 0, so minus 0. So 3 squared is 9. 9 plus 3 is 12. So 12 plus 0 equals 12 units squared. Okay. Next one. Okay, so the next one is y is equal to cos 3x. And the limits are pi over 3 equals x, and x equals 0. Okay. Now with a cos and sine graph, you must always remember to cut them in half. So with this, in this particular case, we've got cos 3x. So it goes like this. Okay, so we're going to cut it right here down the middle. So this is pi over 3. So in that case, that is 60. This is 60 degrees. So we cut it in half and we get 30 degrees. So that is pi over 6. So this here is equal to this. If you just put another line here, that is equal to that. Okay, so this area is equal to that area. So what we've done now is halved it, because now we're going to do symmetry. Okay, so we've got the integral of pi over 6 and 0 cos 3x. Okay, so we've got our limit. We've got our upper limit and our lower limit. So Now what we have is, now we're going to integrate cos 3x. So that is sine 3x over 3. Pi over 6 and 0. So now what we're going to do is say sine 3 pi over 6 over 3 minus sine 3 to the 0 over 3. Okay, since we have our pi over 6, which is 30 degrees, pi, so it's pi times 3, so 3 divided by 6 is 1 over 2. So that is pi over 2. And pi over 2 is 90. And 90 and sine 90 is 1. And sine 90 is 1. So this equals 1 over 3 minus sine 3 times 0 is 0, and sine 0 is 0, so it's 0 over 3, so minus 0. So what we have basically is 1 over 3. And of this, we multiply, because now, what we can do now is 1 over 3 units squared. That's for 1/2. Now for the other half, to get the other side, we multiply by 2. So that is 2 over 3 units squared. Okay. If you found this tutorial helpful, please give it a like and subscribe. It really helps with the algorithm and to grow the channel. Positive feedback is most welcome. I enjoy reading your comments. Please use the comments section to let me know what topics you'd like me to cover in upcoming videos. Be at peace, be kind to each other, and remember, passing well is achievable. Have a great day. Looking forward to seeing you in the next video.